Hi, I'm Jessica Devine. This will be the hardest video I will ever do. I hesitated even doing it, but I believe hearing it may make a difference for other people with Lyme, and their loved ones may gain some valuable insight. Saying it out loud may help me with my healing. My story is the reason I wanted to start Rise Above Lyme support group on Facebook, and the reason this YouTube channel exists. I want to make a difference. I hope by being loud about my journey, it somehow helps the next person. So bear with me as I share the worst part of my life on this video. This is my story of how one tiny tick, the size of a poppy seed, literally ruined my life. I was at the top of my world. I was happily married, had 2 incredible kids, a thriving business, and had just published a book helping people get healthy. I felt like things were falling into place. I was genuinely happy. Anyone that knows me knows I was a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day and the laughter when you're crying. Simply speaking, I brought joy because making people laugh and smile has always been my true self. It feeds me. I am also very ambitious and have always been a little outrageous in my actions, yet always positive. Then in January 2012, that all changed. My family and I went to rent a cabin at Shaver Lake in California to celebrate my daughter's birthday. I was so excited. When we arrived early evening, we quickly unpacked the van and settled in for a quick dinner. We picked our rooms and then we played in the game room for hours. We were all happy to get away. We figured we would go out in nature the following day. Keep that in mind. I hadn't even been outside. That evening, I went into the bathroom to do all my normal skincare rituals and put on my comfy jammies. And I noticed a black speck on my abdomen, and I went to brush it off. It didn't brush off, so I tried again. Then I had a girl moment, and I freaked thinking this thing is attached to me, and it was. I got super grossed out. I dug my fingernail into it, and I flicked it. Yes. I flicked the enemy that stole my life. Then I moved on. I thought, no biggie. We're in the mountains. More bugs are expected. 30 minutes later, as I lay in bed laughing with my husband about a comedy show that we had just watched, I suddenly had like a sweeping, cold, hot sensation over and over. And I voiced it, explaining that I didn't feel right to my husband. It got worse within minutes. I started getting super scared. I stood up, vertigo took over, and I started to tremble. And so my husband held me and took me downstairs, laid me on the couch near the fire, but I couldn't stop shaking. What I can only describe as like a seizure. My mind was affected as well. I immediately started speaking out loud how I didn't want to die and I'm too young for this and I have so much to live for. It was super weird and it was not like me at all to talk like this. It was like the flu had hit me times 100. My husband started Googling, trying to figure out what it might be. I had no history of anxiety and I was perfectly healthy 2 hours before. I ate extremely well. I exercised 5 days a week. We started thinking maybe it was altitude sickness or maybe food poisoning or too much caffeine but none of those made any sense because Shaver Lake isn't that high and I drink coffee all the time. We didn't want to wake the kids and I didn't want to ruin my daughter's birthday. So I wanted to wait and kind of just see how this played out. Well, what happened was I laid there, my husband holding my hands, concerned. I was shaking uncontrollably. And speaking of death, I felt like I was dying. 6 hours later, I finally fell asleep. I woke groggy, but it was like over. I proceeded to try and enjoy our 2-day vacation, but I felt weak. The first night back, we sat down to watch one of our favorite shows, and halfway through, bam, it happened again. My body started shaking, I started having head issues, and it scared me all over again. I now also had a lot of back and spine pain, worse than I had ever had before, but I just started like a squat and a push-up challenge, so I kind of stopped the challenge and I blamed it on that. I went to the doctor the very next day, and that's when I had strange abdominal pressure and a red circle had already kicked in. I explained what was happening in detail to the doctor, including the experience that happened on our trip. She prescribed 800 milligrams ibuprofen 3 times a day and sent me on my way. She dismissed the red area on my abdomen. I would revisit this doctor almost weekly as these episodes continued and the pain was spreading. She did an x-ray and said, "Oh, you have scoliosis. That's why." I questioned why scoliosis, which I've lived with my entire life, would do this to me in an instant. She dismissed my line of questioning, and my abdominal pain and burning sensation just got worse. So she sent me to a gastroenterologist. In the meantime, I decided I'll schedule myself an appointment with a scoliosis specialist. So the gastroenterologist suspected ulcers and scheduled me for a throat scope procedure. The results came back and I suddenly had gluten intolerance, gastritis, and ulcers throughout my stomach and esophagus from the overuse of prescribed ibuprofen that my primary had given me. I was put on medication and a strict diet to heal from that. 4 months later, I would be made to repeat it and include, lucky me, a colonoscopy to further get down to the bottom of my never-ending symptoms. At this time, I did see the scoliosis doctor who did a thorough examination and x-ray and told me scoliosis does not do what I'm experiencing. He said it was something internal. He assumed organ related. So now I had proof from my primary that it wasn't scoliosis. The next time I came in, the episodes now were happening almost daily. And her answer now was gabapentin, 800 milligrams twice a day. But by the second dose, when I was out with my mom, we were getting out of the car to go into the store, and I lost my ability to stand or communicate. Super scary. I looked at my mom and communicated the best I could. She's my mom, so she knew. She rushed me to the doctor's office. She left me in the car and ran inside to have them come out and check me out. They refused to come out or see me and said ER was our only choice. My mom was utterly pissed by their lack of compassion and rushed me to the ER, but had to stop to get my 5-year-old from school on the way. A good friend of mine met us there to pick up my son, not to scare him. My condition made my poor friend cry so badly in the ER. As they wheeled me in, I was in a seizure-like state at this point. And after 6 to 8 long hours of being in that room, the doctor came in to witness it. He informed me that my doctor had put me on a dose that was intended for someone with epilepsy. He told me to never take that medication again. He said it looked like I had MS and that it would take a while to figure it out since MS testing isn't precise. Home I went, no solution, offered muscle relaxers. Always a drug. I kept going back to my doctor 1 to 2 times a week for blood work because of increased symptoms. I kept smelling ammonia at that point too. She said it's probably anxiety and offered me antidepressants, which I refused. During a really bad episode, my friend rushed me to that same doctor, and since she would only continue to offer me antidepressants, I decided to find another primary. I'll be sure to send this video to that doctor. Round 2. I came in and I met my new doctor, explained my life, how everything started, and what I had been through. He started some tests, and now I started visiting weekly due to a range of sporadic symptoms that were crazy, from knees going out to my neck. I couldn't move my neck, or shoulders being all locked up. I had low back pain that was worse than labor, tremors every day, severe headaches. I was having heart issues. I was falling apart. I showed them the bullseye rash on my abdomen because it was still there over a year. But she offered me fungus cream. I asked, does that mean it's like ringworm? She replied, definitely not, but it's unusual. I questioned why I had this mark for over a year. She dismissed it, but I made her document it in my medical records. So I kept getting, everything looks good in your labs, and I got my next antidepressant offering. I always defended myself, saying I'm the farthest thing from being a depressed person. I'm actually quite the opposite. I'm clearly sick from something. I said I'm just concerned because I've always been super healthy and I can feel something spreading, and I'm frustrated that you can't figure it out. Once again, I left. That is when the bad heart symptoms and problems started. So they did an EKG and said I was fine. And the doctor said the symptoms that I was feeling was because I was a type A personality. Once again, I left. My blood pressure kept getting really low. I would struggle to breathe at times, and my heart would jump and race insanely fast, making me dizzy all the time. I went back again. I was finally sent to a cardiologist. The cardiologist put me on a 30-day monitor, did a stress test, ran a bunch of blood work once more. Everything looked good. But he ordered an echocardiogram to be sure. I would return several times to the cardiologist. They did finally diagnose me with POTS. So I have really low blood pressure now and very high pulse. I went on medication, and that caused me more issues, passing out and shaking episodes. I revisited my scoliosis doctor again to seek answers. He ran more tests and found out I had degenerative disc disease and bone spurs. And I of course thought, wow, I finally got my diagnosis. Wrong. For the next year, I had acupuncture, chiropractic treatments, deep tissue massages, physical therapy, cupping, taping, intense physical fitness, anything to control and try to fix the pain. I denied doing recommended steroids and epidurals. Thank God, knowing what it would have done to me. Now that I know. I finally went back to my primary asking for help. I was giving up at this point. This time my doctor sent me to do several MRIs, CAT scans, ultrasounds, and more. Basically over a 6-month period, ruling out any major issues. Blood work looked great. Heart issues worsening, dismissed as anxiety. Tremors dismissed. They guessed maybe arthritis, early Parkinson's, my memory issues, maybe Alzheimer's or dementia. To get rid of me, they referred me to an RA doctor, and I waited 2 months to see him. Then he just tested me and told me it's not RA. Go back to your primary. I saw many specialists during this time. It was an endless search for answers. Then one day at a restaurant celebrating a loved one's birthday, the episode that I usually had every day happened right there in public. How I managed to avoid witness for that many years is beyond me. My dear friend walked me outside to see if I could get it to pass. I felt like something was seriously wrong. My body was out of control. I was losing it. I drove myself straight to the doctor while my friend traveled close behind, as I didn't want my kids to be in the car with me. My parents met me there to sadly witness this. I was given an EKG and offered Xanax. I was feeling defeated. I was sick of anxiety and depression being their answer instead of looking outside the box, or hell, maybe the bullseye rash documented in my medical records. After almost 4 years, some strange sensation started to hit my head. It came like waves of movement. It was like moving pressure. It was very alarming. I remember sitting in my kitchen talking to my dad and finally mentioning it out loud. It was impossible to describe to a doctor. I begged them to see a neurologist as each week the head symptoms were worsening. I started calling and begging almost daily that something was severely wrong with my head. They insisted I come in before they would send me to a neurologist. So I did. I came in and they offered me migraine medication instead, and it did nothing. So I came back again asking for help. They ordered a brain MRI and it came back with a few concerns, but I was normal. So they wouldn't refer me. So they sent me to more physical therapy for 3 months. I continued to decline. By this time I was bedridden each and every day. I wasn't seeing my kids for days on end. My vertigo was getting worse and I was off balance. The memory issues worse every single day, and I didn't want to scare them. I was slowly losing the ability to speak right, and I was losing my short-term memory. I had lost some basic vocabulary. I was passing out. My blood pressure would drop drastically all the time, and laying down was the only way to cope. I started to pray to die. I wanted the years of torture to be done and to stop being a burden to my family. I thought long and hard, but I've witnessed what suicide does to loved ones, and I knew I could not hurt the people I love. So I knew dying naturally was how it was going to have to happen. I finally just got my own appointment after begging the neurologist to see me since my primary would not refer me. She felt for me. She saw my brain MRI and pointed out some things suspicious and booked me again the next week. She ran blood work and tests, and I was fine according to those, but she could visibly see the torture I was living. I finally saw a glimmer of compassion. I got to the point people I loved didn't believe me. They thought I was a hypochondriac. I want to say here and now that my close family always did. Always. I might not have fought as long as I did had I not had their complete faith in my sanity. I knew in my heart that there was something majorly wrong with me. I wasn't crazy. I was dying and desperate. I had seen 30 doctors by this time, had over 40 tests, all showing I was fairly healthy. I returned to the neurologist, and after seeing my declining state and questionable labs, she sent me to a kidney specialist. After many tests, he said I desperately needed to see an endocrinologist. So I did. I brought in all my labs and I poured my really sad story out to him. It was a very long appointment. And at the end, he looked at me, and I had hope at this point, and said, "You're just depressed and you need to learn how to be productive." He said, "You need Ritalin for energy and these 3 antidepressants. Add 1 each week." I left and I never went back. I was there to evaluate my endocrine problem. What a ridiculous doctor. My sister, my support person, was always Googling and trying to help diagnose me since doctors were failing me. One day she texted me, "Are you sure you don't have Lyme disease?" I kept that text, and I always will. I remember replying, "No, I would know if I had that. They've tested me for everything." She then pointed out that I had every symptom because she did some survey she found online. She got me thinking. But that week, I joined a local support group for chronic pain sufferers, as I could no longer feel isolated by no one understanding what I was trying to live with. That is where my life changed. I sat with 6 women at an outside restaurant and listened to each of their stories. I was the new one. Then it was the 4th woman's time to talk. As I listened, something happened. I knew her story. I lost it. I started crying. I kept interrupting her to ask her questions. And then I finally just let her finish. And I just continued to cry. I looked into her eyes, and for the first time in 4 years, I saw something I recognized. I saw my soul sister, someone who I deeply understood. And within talking to her for 10 minutes, she looked at me the same way. It was like falling in love with a friend. Fate had brought two desperate people together. She told me about her search and what, after 20 years of searching, she had Lyme disease. I knew now what to do. My sister and Janice had just saved my life. I called the next day to ask my neurologist if she would test me for Lyme disease. I knew how far primary doctors had gotten me, so I thought she may help. She sent me for the labs, and I waited for the results as my symptoms kept getting worse. I got the call. You aren't CDC positive, but I don't like that these specific bands came up reactive. Bingo, I may have found my answer. They started calling to get me in with an infectious disease doctor in town. 20 doctors refused to see me. Although they finally got one that accepted the referral, I called for 4 weeks asking for my appointment. They would not return my call, give me an appointment, or answer my neurologist. So that is when I was on my own again. My parents, sister, and I sat in my kitchen calling every single infectious disease doctor in my town. Need I say how many? It was over 25. They would say one of three things. We don't treat people with that. We aren't allowed to treat people with that. No, we can't see you. We take your insurance, yes, but can't treat you. Keep in mind, this is their area of medicine. So once again, I had hit another wall. We found out that there were Lyme specialists. 4 of them were in San Francisco, so I called and tried to get on the waiting list, but they were 8 to 12 weeks long. And I knew with every ounce of my body and soul that I had less than a month to live. I was shutting down, dying before my children's eyes. That is when on Google we found that there was a specialist in Pismo, less than 3 hours away. I called crying, begging them that I'm close to death and I need them. They also had a waiting list. They called me daily and I them. And 2 weeks later, they did find an opening, less than 24 hours away. My husband took me, assisting me to walk in, unable to function or talk properly at this point. I couldn't keep my head up and I had to lay down for the 4-hour consultation. As I poured my story out to my new doctor and he examined my records of 4 years, he started telling me what each symptom was from. The first doctor in 4 years that had seen these crazy symptoms before 1,000,000 times and reassured me that I was far from crazy. I rejoiced and I bawled my eyes out right in front of him. Someone was finally listening. He confirmed my clinical diagnosis of Lyme, Bartonella, Babesia, and Ehrlichia by my presenting symptoms and everything, including the ignored bullseye documented in my medical records almost 4 years earlier. He asked us to stay the night nearby and test at a lab down the street, knowing I was not well. We did 17 vials of blood and my labs were sent to Germany and a specialty lab in California. He was testing for everything. I was sent home on my first antibiotic and other stuff to help stabilize me. The seizures were daily and I was using a walker as I would fall from passing out. Living was hard. I was on my first antibiotic and at this point still bedridden, in pain, literally praying to die. On day 3, my first Herx reaction occurred. I can only describe it as a sweeping toxic sensation waving through my body, and I started screaming in fear to my parents who were watching me at the time. I remember screaming that I wanted it out of me. My body went into a seizure-type episode and it wouldn't stop. My mom called the doctor and we rushed to take activated charcoal and things to help get rid of the first flood of toxins. When you kill Lyme bacteria, they literally add toxins to your bloodstream. And getting septic shock is always the risk. A normal person would not respond this way to antibiotics. Once it passed, it was a second confirmation that this was Lyme. I started to do the recommended sauna to help get rid of toxins on a daily basis, and I ended up in the ER. I would get tunnel vision and I would lose the ability to stand or think. Even though it wasn't too hot, and I was only in there for a short time, my sweating mechanism didn't work due to adrenal fatigue and my blood pressure was too low from POTS. The ER would just fix me with salt water. So results did come in 2 weeks later, and I had every single one of his clinical diagnoses confirmed in my blood, and the shocking bonus, even to him, of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. It is often deadly within weeks. Someone just 2 years earlier had died in my town, so it scared me to hear this. He was shocked I had survived 3.5 years with no treatment, that I probably had weeks to live if I hadn't have got to him when I did. You're supposed to be somewhere between like 150 and 200 on this particular test, and I was a shocking 7. He had never seen one this low. I was torn between being thankful to finally know, after so much doubt had been cast upon me by friends and doctors. On the other hand, I was frightened as I found the ugly truth about this disease and that a cure was unavailable. The health department called me after receiving my results to ask me some questions. They kept saying I must have traveled. I explained the truth and told them where exactly I was when I got bit. They argued with me, and I said no one knows where I have been but me. They then proceeded to tell me they won't record my case because I was bit outside of their criteria. I asked them, so you're saying since doctors don't diagnose me within 6 months, you don't document my case? How is that accurate for public data, and exactly how does that inform and protect the public? That call was eye-opening to show me how inaccurate case counts are. After not being able to tolerate oral treatment, I then had 3 separate PICC lines over 18 months doing IV antibiotics 3 times a day. I also had to do IV glutathione and fluids 2 or 3 times a week. So I basically had a line going from my arm through my arm into my heart. A nurse would come weekly to monitor my line, check my vitals, and do blood work. It was a lot to manage. At this point, I had developed reactivated viruses from childhood. I was diagnosed with POTS, had encephalitis, inflammation of my brain, aluminum toxicity, ammonia releasing off my brain as well. I had gone autoimmune. I had adrenal fatigue. I had developed allergic reactions to things I hadn't before. I was going severely anemic every 7 months, requiring iron infusions in the hospital. The list goes on. All of this was caused by Lyme and the co-infections. There is no safe attachment time, as the tick was on me for less than 2 hours, the moment it gets on you. The co-infections it carried are actually worse than Lyme itself, and Lyme rarely travels alone. I'll never forget my 5-year-old little boy having to be brave and leave in the dark with a flashlight during a seizure to get my parents next door to help. A rare instance, I was home alone. I feel very guilty over the things my children have witnessed. I then had to remove other obstacles to heal further. I had extensive dental work done to address the infections from root canals and metal toxicity. One procedure lasted 6.5 hours. It was awful, but I did feel almost immediate improvement. I addressed mold exposures as well, and that was a nightmare in itself. I have continued to treat this with natural methods ever since, for several years. My severe symptoms have resolved. No more seizures. My memory is back. I can walk unassisted, and my pain has improved greatly. The deep pressure and electrical stabbing headaches are gone. I don't go anemic anymore. Fatigue is better, but still haunts me. I finally have my heart condition and endocrine issues caused by Lyme under control as well. I still viciously treat Babesia, and I'm closer than I've ever been to beating that. But Rocky Mountain spotted fever, Ehrlichia, and Bartonella are in remission. I have reversed my autoimmune results in labs. I am working on strengthening my immune system, and I continue to treat Lyme, toxicity, and viruses. I still crash and struggle, but I have made incredible progress. I remember feeling like all hope was lost. So please never give up, because I am proof that we can live again. I try to support others daily in the support groups I help run, as it gives me purpose. Awareness work from the moment I got diagnosed has helped me find meaning to my fight. Even if I help one person get diagnosed sooner than I did, or help guide them to answers, it's all worth it. It also helps others get validation from their family and friends, since this disease is very lonely without support. My husband, kids, parents, my sisters, and a few friends have been my rock. They are why I'm still alive. I will always be thankful to my husband for what he has done to save me. He sold everything and gave up everything. We may have faced some hard stuff through all of this, but he stood by me, made sure I survived. I am utterly burdened by the guilt, as you can imagine. Affecting someone's dreams and goals is the worst form of torture for me personally. I'm the one that helps people chase dreams, not crush them. But at $36,000 a year, it has been more than difficult to afford this disease. It cost us actually $55,000 the first year. And I had full coverage insurance, and it still cost that. I'm thankful for fundraisers done for me early on and the meals that got delivered, because our family was facing some horrible stuff. I want everyone who knows me to know my story. The one they didn't see because they were behind closed doors. They saw me on the days I looked stable. I also took the time to give you the short version because, frankly, if you knew everything, you would be surprised that I survived. If you were here for me and believed me and loved me through it all, I want to say thank you and I love you. If you walked away and you distanced yourself from me and avoided my family, then I want to warn you that I am not the same person. I am still the ray of sunshine that I once was. I am funny and I'm positive as I've always been. But I am a newer, stronger version of me. I am the one who, through her own suffering, has gained the greatest sense of empathy you can possibly have. I suffer in some way daily, even if I say I'm okay and I'm smiling. I struggle, but I embrace my good days when the symptoms don't crush my spirit or my hope. I have incredible strength, and I know it. I never hold back on speaking my truth. I save people's lives now. And if I had to lose people and a little of myself on the way, I'm okay with that because I now see life in a totally different way. Things and stuff mean nothing. People mean something. Human kindness and human decency, loyalty and compassion are everything. I am picky on who's allowed to be in my world. If you weren't there for me when I struggled, you won't walk beside me when I reach my finish line. I'm better than that. I don't need anyone, but I will love the ones who flow me power and who let me love them back. The name of my support group and the YouTube channel are significant to me. Rise above Lyme. It's what we must all try to do. I know how hard it is, but you can rise above it. I am Jessica, and I didn't choose this, and I certainly didn't want this disease, but I will rise above it. I'm going to make this mean something. Please keep fighting. A cure will come. Say it and believe it. Mindset is everything. Thank you for listening.